Hello and welcome to the Homemade Songwriter. I'm Matt, and this week I built some acoustic panels for my home studio, and I want to talk about it. Okay, let's start with the why. Why make my own panels? Why have acoustic treatment at all? The short answers are: one, it's way cheaper to build your own, and we'll get into more of that later. And two, it's going to make my recordings sound better. But here are the longer and I think more important answers. The music industry is changing. People used to believe that if you wanted to be an artist, if you wanted to make music for a living, then you had to be backed by a production team, a manager, a label, and recorded in a professional studio. That's just not the case anymore, and it's part of the reason that we started this channel in the first place. The Homemade Songwriter, people that can do it from home independently. Let me just quickly speak to the things that used to be true with what's true now. There are home studios right now that are putting out better sounding recordings, better sounding records than the bands that recorded in those top dollar studios back when labels and managers were required. The technology has gotten that good and that accessible for the everyday musician. I mean, my interface cost me $150. Not only that, but the internet has totally changed everything. The independent musician can now make a living making music as long as he builds an audience and finds people who love and care about their music. And they can record that music from their home. People don't care about where it was recorded or how expensive it was to record the album, as long as it's the songs they love by the artists they love and it's listenable, which again is way easier to achieve with today's technology. The internet has also allowed for musicians to be connected in a way that they never were before. If you want someone who plays saxophone in Sweden to play a solo on your song, then you can email them or find them on a service like Fiverr or SoundBetter, and they can send you their recordings probably the next day. You can send it out to somebody across the country to mix it and someone else to master it. I mean, the whole world is your production team. And there is so much good free information on YouTube for how to record and mix your songs. I learned everything I know from YouTube. I follow Graham Cochran of the Recording Revolution and Joe Giller of the Home Studio Corner. They taught me everything I know. And in the age of everyone and anyone being able to make music from their home studio, the cream rises to the top, meaning best song wins. And that's sort of where we want this channel to fit into that process. So you can learn to record and mix, probably from people who know a lot more than me about that. But we want to help you make your song really good. Because a bad song, mixed well, produced well, is still a bad song. But a good song, even if it's not the best recording of all time, is still going to rise to the top. And if you need proof about all this, then just look no further than Billie Eilish. She is a worldwide name who records her albums in her childhood bedroom with her brother. I mean, she literally tours the world with an album that she made in her bedroom. So with all that said, I want to make music from my home studio. I'm a songwriter. I want to make songs, record songs, release songs for my whole life. It's just what I want to do. But obviously a bedroom is not an ideal place to record anything. There are a couple things you can do to improve them, and the top of the list is acoustic treatment. What an untreated room does is it gives you an unbalanced frequency response, which basically means that any adjustments you make during recording and mixing will be based on inaccurate ear decisions. Basically, the sounds you're hearing are colored by your room. And there are a few different parts and pieces to acoustic treatment, but I'll just give you the quick mile-high view. There are basically two kinds of treatment: diffusion and absorption. Diffusion looks something like this, and it's basically something that when the sound hits it, it breaks it up and deters energy buildup and frequency buildup of the sound. Honestly, having things in your room in general, like shelves with trinkets on them, act as some sort of diffusion, but the panels that I built this week are absorption. Absorption does exactly what you think it would do. When the sound hits it, it absorbs it, takes it in, and sort of deadens the space. Now, the reason that you want a more dead space in your studio is that it gives a more balanced frequency response, so you can make accurate decisions. And two, it counteracts the drywall. So drywall is what your walls are made of in most houses, unless you have some kind of wood cladding or something. And it's a really reflective surface. So what that means is that the sound bounces off the drywall all around the room, and it can make a real reverby sound or kind of almost a slapback echo sound. And when you record in a space like that, when you do any sort of compression, it really starts to exaggerate those bad frequencies and those frequency buildups and creates a real tiring effect on your ear, and it's just in general a bad practice for recording. Super quick side note here, if you don't have any treatment in your room, don't let that stop you from making music. There are plenty of things you can do for free. I mean, this is a bedroom studio. I have a bed right here. So what I usually do is take the mattress and lean that up against the wall as some sort of absorption. Or you can record vocals in a closet with clothes. There's a ton of different things you can do, but the bottom line always is keep making music, keep releasing music, and keep writing music. So to summarize, I'm going to build these panels for acoustic absorption to tighten up my recordings. So let's get into the supplies needed for a project like this. I use 1x4s for the frame and 1x3 for the bracing in the corners and the back. A set of hinges, I'll get back to that later. Some deck screws, weed fabric, Rockwell insulation, fabric from a fabric store, and all these products will be linked in the description so you know exactly what I used. process that I went through to build these panels so you can kind of follow along. Took a lot of inspiration from Ray Ortega's video on his DIY acoustic panels, so I'll link that video in the description. Feel free to check that out as well. So to start, the installation comes in 4-foot by 2-foot pieces, so that's what I went with for the panel sizes. I definitely could have cut them up, but I thought that the sizes would work well in the studio as is. So the first step was to measure and make all the cuts for the frame, corner braces, and the back brace. After that, it was just a matter of building the box, drilling pilot holes, screwing them together, adding the braces, and repeating for the other boxes. I ended up making 5 boxes in total. Once the frames were complete, I stapled the weed fabric to the back side of the frame and cut off the excess. This basically just creates a breathable backing for the installation to sit against. After the backing was complete on all the boxes, it's as simple as laying in the insulation, and then laying the whole box face down on the fabric that I chose and wrapping the fabric and stapling it in place. I found that the best way to do this was to place a staple in the middle of whatever side I was working on, then pull the fabric tight and add a staple on each end, and then repeat that on the opposite side, being sure to pull the fabric tight with each staple. After you do that on all 4 sides, the fabric is held in place pretty good, and then it's just a matter of adding a staple every 2 inches or so and working the corners to get a nice clean line. I repeated this process with the black fabric for 3 panels, but had something special in mind for the last 2. I picked a cooler fabric, at least I think it's cool. It has kind of this Aztec, Indian, New Mexico vibe, and I was born in New Mexico and just thought it'd be a cool vibe for the studio space. For these ones, I wrapped them the same way that I wrapped the other panels, but then I wanted to put hinges on them so they could serve a different purpose than being hung on a wall. My plan for these 2 acoustic panels was that they'd be stored away somewhere, and then when it was time to record something, I could pull them out, open them up on the hinges, and then set them in front of whatever I was recording. The mic would sit in the corner of those 2 panels and would face the source, whether that's a guitar or a vocal or whatever. This would just create a really tight space for recording and basically act as one more barrier for the sound to have to go through before it can bounce around the room. So once that was complete, I added the picture wire to the back of the panels that I was going to hang and hung them on the wall. Question is, did they make a difference? So here's an A-B comparison of a couple different recordings with the acoustic panels in the room and with them outside of the room. The first one is just a talking head like this, as if I'm recording a YouTube video, and the second is me playing guitar. Here's an example of me doing a talking head YouTube video with the acoustic treatment in the room. And this is an example of me doing a talking head YouTube video with no acoustic treatment in the room. So to my ear, the recordings with the acoustic treatment in place are way better. They are tighter, cleaner, and they're going to be much easier to work with in the mixing and editing phase. Okay, now the question I'm sure you're all asking is, how much did this cost? So here's a quick breakdown on screen of the prices I paid for these materials. The wood came into about $93. The fabric was about $70. Insulation I got for free because I work for a general contractor and our insulation guy had an extra package of rock wool that he gave me. Picture wire I already had, the screws I already had, and I think I bought a box of staples for like $10. All in all, these panels cost me in total about $180, which is roughly $35, $36 a panel. This, in my opinion, is a great deal. There are a ton of panels online that you can buy that are cheap but don't really work very well. And if you want to end up buying panels that work super well, they're usually super expensive, i.e. their cost is usually about the cost of this entire project for one panel. So all in all, this cost for me was totally worth it. So let me know what you think of these panels, and if you have something like this, or if you would consider doing something like this to take your studio to the next level. And if you're ready to start recording and releasing music, and you want to become the next Billie Eilish homemade songwriting home studio superstar, but you don't really have any song ideas right now, then check the description for our 30 songwriting prompts to jumpstart your creativity guide. It's quick, it's helpful, and it'll get you on the road to releasing your next song. That's it for this one. Keep writing, and we'll see you in the next one.